everybody. Welcome to another episode of Indie Club Podcast. I'm today joined by Dan Parry. He's a co-founder of Tectonic. He will be introducing himself. So I will just tell you quickly that Tectonic is a company that helps startups understand the exact needs of their current and potential customers. And I think it's really exciting. And I'm looking forward to Dan sharing his story. And I will let him take it away and introduce himself. So please go on, Dan.
Sure thing. Hi everyone, I am Dan. So I'll give you a brief rundown of how I got to where Tectonic is, and it will help explain kind of why we do what we do. So I started in computer science, doing computer science when I was younger, because I wanted to make video games, and I love video games. I'm not very good at them, but I love them. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll be good at the ones that I make. On my first day, I realized that I cannot program. I do not have the capacity and mental acuity to program. And I told my mom, and mom was like, stick it through. You've only got 3 years to go, as many ethnic parents want to say to their kids. So I did. And then I failed multiple times throughout the year and throughout the years, but made it through. And then I did. While I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I did tech support for a while because I was always good at solving problems and fixing computers. And that was fun for a while, but I realized that I wanted to be around more creative people and do more creative things, because in my spare time, I was always making stuff, music, writing, stories, all artistic things. So I moved to an advertising agency and did tech support there for a while I tried to figure out what I wanted to do, and realized there was a group of people that wrote stuff. And I was like, I like writing stuff. So I effectively took a week's holiday to work in the creative department, which was downstairs. For the first few days, people kept on asking me to turn off their computers and turn it back on again. And I was like, you can literally do that yourself. But after a while, I realized that being a copywriter was exactly what I wanted to do. I enjoyed coming up with concepts and writing stuff and perfecting the written word. And I like writing tweets. So I eventually went back to IT and hated it, and said, I'm never going to do that again. So quit. And then figured out a way of becoming a copywriter, and actually went back to my old job as a copywriter. And while I was doing that, my brother always had a music tech startup that he was working on with his friends. And what he was trying to do was to help DJs basically promote themselves better so that they can get better gigs, especially up-and-coming DJs. But especially back in the day, it was very difficult to find up-and-coming DJs. His initial plan was to build a three-sided marketplace, but three-sided marketplaces are a terrible thing to start on initially. So he sort of started by focusing on the DJs. And he kept on asking me to get involved, and I said no, because I wasn't really comfortable with my skills that I had recently acquired. And then at one point I realized that he was a genius and I didn't want to be poor without him. So I got on this startup journey and realized that I enjoy the act of creating something and making something from nothing. And I get to use all the skills that I've acquired. And eventually quit my job as a copywriter because nobody likes reading, as you can tell from, and focused predominantly on the tech startup. And that was fun, learning how to build a business, talking to DJs, being in a place that we were both passionate about, and trying to help people, creatives, a thing that I'm really passionate about as well. We got some funding for that too, and tried to grow the business. But because it was difficult to get money from DJs, because getting money from any type of creative is usually quite tricky. So people kept on asking us about our app and how we built it. So we started building apps for people, and to bootstrap the business. And as we were bootstrapping that, we built more and more apps, and then built and spoke to more and more founders. And then that became our primary business, because Cambridge Analytica happened, which killed data, and this business was something that the market was pulling us. The market was calling us. At first, initially, for example, we wanted to just build prototypes, and then people kept on asking us, Carl, can you just build us a real thing? We were like, no, we don't want to do that because we don't want to compete. But the market kept on asking us to build full apps. So we did that. And then we realized when we were building the apps, people were not building the right thing for the market because they were building what they wanted and their vision and not what the market needed. So we developed that process.
Great. I just want to stop you here because I think this is a great subject where how do you approach telling to your client that they are basically wrong? And when I work with my clients, and we are in the basically similar industry, doing the similar job, and I know it's always a challenge where finding the common ground between what client thinks they need and what we know they actually need. So because we know we have the industry experience, know the market, how we test with the customers, and client has an idea and they want to create this idea, but they not necessarily know how everything works. So and I always give my best not to constrain anybody's vision, but I always want to kind of put it in a proper context and make sure they succeed. This is the goal. So how do you approach the clients with that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. One of the ways that we approach it is that we set ourselves up as the experts in the field. So we would have done hundreds of interviews, we would have done loads of prototypes, and we present them the information in the best possible way. We think because of this evidence that we've either amassed ourselves or from the market, that you should do X, Y, or Z. However, it is your choice and your money. You might be right. The chances are you're not, but you might be right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you started working with startups, and I think this is the for creatives, this is the best kind of playground to work. And I know a lot of people who are starting out and trying to find themselves, don't know what is the market segment they want to commit themselves to, what is the type of companies or founders they want to work with. Do you have any advice for people how to find themselves, to position themselves and find the type of clients they want to work with? Like, what was your process and how would you advise people to approach this?
Sure. So I guess it really does depend on your personal goals. And if your goal is to try and amass as much money as possible, which is a fine personal goal, then you may take certain actions, or if your goal is to make enough money doing something that you enjoy doing, and with clients and customers that you kind of like, you may take a different goal. So my natural inclination is to follow my passions and try and be around people that I like being around. So I enjoy being around entrepreneurs. It gets me into situations where I get to talk to wonderful people like you, right? So I enjoy the hustle. I enjoy the ups and the downs. And I find a natural affinity with those kind of people. So I think I just tend to follow my curiosity and follow my passion, because if I do and follow the skills that I have, if I do, then the chances are I'll be able to come across problems in the space. And if people are passionate about the problem, then it's easier to build a business around that. So that's kind of my approach.
Yeah. Okay. So you said that you're bootstrapping your company, right? And you are targeting startups, and I know that it's challenging. A lot of startups either have limited funding or no funding at all. So did at any point when you were building your company that affected any decisions you made in who you want to work with and how?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's an interesting question. I think as you are building your business, the chances are you may not have the luxury of choice as to who you actually want to work with. People assume that when you're starting your business, you can just go after your exact target customer, and that may not be true. So initially, when you start, you may be able to only get the customers that are in front of you. But however, the learning that you gain from that customer will allow you to get the data back to tell you whether you should continue with those customer types or whether you need to pivot your product or pivot your service. So I think that iteration of your offering, of your messaging, of your customer type allows you to figure out where you actually sit People often make it feel like it's a super binary thing. Like, I chose these customers and now I've got this money. It's like, that's not often the case. So I think it's a case of iterating on your customer type, which is what we've been doing. And the learnings that we've got from that has allowed us to segment our market more effectively.
Do you have any specific, and you can feel free to say no, but like specific approach to actually refining the customers? Like, did you like read a book, or there's a framework you follow, or it basically just comes from a feeling internally?
So it's actually a combination of all of those things, because you get learning from everything. The main thing that we started off with was the Lean Startup. That was a really great book by Eric Ries, which helped us understand the process of what a lean startup could be. And then in terms of the approach for speaking to or finding customers, going out to them and talking to them and seeing what their problems are and whether the thing that you're offering is actually the right thing for them, and seeing whether they have problems. And then I guess, and then also just stating the intent, as in like for example, if we wanted Series A startups, which we always do, but like, yes, that's what we want to get. How do we get those? Who are the decision makers within those businesses? What problems are they having? So really, really everything that we do is actually rooted down in problem. And I think that's where people sometimes go wrong, because they go in with a solution in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I know that. Feel free to skip this subject, but I know that you've taken on outside capital to grow your business.
Yeah.
Is this something that I'm free to ask you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So I just want to hear how it came about, you actually deciding to raise outside capital, and what was the main driver behind that decision?
Sure. So we were completely bootstrapped, as I mentioned, from for 3 years, pretty much, and we had plans, goals, intentions, and dreams, and never thought about any investment, internal, external investment. And then we were approached by a company called Cornerstone, who invest primarily in Black-owned businesses, and their kind of values kind of aligned with ours. And there was a period of courting. It was a bit like dating, I guess, but like, I think the interesting question is not whether individuals or businesses take investment, but is if the investment and the capital is actually in line with your goals. So oftentimes when we speak to early stage startups, for example, many of them are like, how do I get invested? Like, you might not need investment. You might, like, depending on what you're actually trying to achieve, you may be able to generate a very profitable business without taking on any external investment. And you may not need to take on some investment. The alternative as well is if you are in a space where you need to grow very quickly and capital is the fuel you need for you to acquire a vast number of customers, for you to grow your market, to do some marketing, you may need investment. Or if your technology is particularly expensive. So I think it really depends on what your goals are. So yeah, we took on investment because our goals aligned, which are basically to help as many people with their entrepreneurship journey build sustainable businesses that are meaningful. And
cool. That sounds like a noble, worthy cause to pursue. And did you consider do you plan on developing your own products in the future, being backed by this capital, or do you just tend on seeking out outside clients?
Yeah, so I think me personally, I'm a big fan of technology, being able to remove the swapping time and money. I don't know if about you, but like trading time for money can be exhausting. So using technology to be able to scale some of the things that some of the ideas that we have and the processes is key. So we actually are thinking about like a product at the moment to try and help us scale the business using technology. So yeah, I think one of the key levers for capital is being able to build things that allow people to allow businesses to be able to scale and grow and create more value and make revenue and generate value while you sleep. And I really want to sleep a lot, so, especially in this pandemic.
Sleep while money is coming in. That sounds like a dream come true.
It is. It is. And I think it's. And I think it's. I don't know. What are your thoughts on like building products and services? Like, is that something that you?
So personally, I'm currently involved as a co-founder on one of the products that recently won Startup Weekend in Germany.
Oh, excellent!
And it's basically like because excuse me, the topic of Startup Weekend was COVID-19, and all of the startup ideas were around solving problems that COVID-19 basically now created. So this idea is having a digital kindergarten for parents who are staying at home with their kids,
Nice.
preschoolers. And the major problem with parenting in the society in general is that nobody taught parents how to be a parent, right? There are books, but realistically, how many people actually read books or take classes? And even if they do, you're only human and you have finite energy to deal with everything. And everybody's being put under a lot of stress at this moment. So this app basically brings the structure that you have in the kindergarten, because kids today, they are like, oh, he's an angel when he's in the kindergarten, then he comes home and he's a nightmare. It's because they don't have the same structure at home. And this app will be backed by a lot of research coming from people who are experts in the field working with kids. And basically it will give it will help parents to give their kids the same structure they would have in the kindergarten, with learning activities, downtime, rest time, fun, and then regulate how much time they spend in front of a screen or whatever. Like, is it a watching cartoon or whatever the award would be. And the thing where it will, I think, succeed is it will give parents a lot of quiet time to work while they're home. And it's an interesting take. And the first time in my life where I found myself being a part of a product that I'm not the idea guy in. I'm the one that has all of these ideas, and I'm trying to gather as much people around me as I can and then build something. But this is the first time where I heard an idea. I was like, oh, this makes sense. And I know a lot of people need something like this. So it could be interesting. So we'll see. But I agree. I agree completely that I love building products, and it is something that I have been doing for years. And just like you said, exchanging time and experience, you are a finite resource.
Absolutely.
And then at some point you will not be young forever. You will not have the same energy, and you need to find a way where you can bring more value for the same amount of time. So I agree 100%.
And I think the way that you described it as well is like, it is the generation of value. Like the exchange of value for money is what it is. But like being able to generate value while you sleep, that's actually what you're doing.
Exactly. This is why, one of the reasons why I do this podcast, because while I'm not doing it, I hope somebody gets the value out of this. Before I come back to Tectonic and business, I just want to take a quick break. You mentioned something at the beginning, like you said, you're having like ethnic parents saying like you need to finish high school, and I come from a similar background, and I understand. It was like when I was growing up, there was a saying in Croatia, like, when you finish college, at least you will have the paper to prove it, right?
Yes,
at least
absolutely.
Like you will have something to show for that. And I dropped out of college in year 2. And I wrote an article a couple of months back. It's in Croatian. I'm working on it, having it translated to English. But as with everything, it never gets to be a priority. But the title of the article was that we, like our generation, is we are being basically brought up and taught to be poor, not in a way where I don't know your backstory, so feel free to fill any gaps. But I come from Croatia. There's like fairly poor country, and I grew up during the war. And my parents they always wanted the best for me, but their best was better than they had it, and they didn't have it great. So for them, my ideal me would be like, oh, you have a college, you get a job, and then you work 9 to 5, and then like you go to pension or whatever. So they didn't have this entrepreneurial spirit to instill in me. It's something that basically came from I don't know, books or internet or whatever. Like it was just I think it was a dumb luck basically. But I don't know how you feel about this, like that we basically parents, like our parents are not raising entrepreneurs in general sense, and this is how I feel at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because similarly, I was born here though. My parents are from Ghana, but what was interesting is, I guess I was born in '84, which meant that by the time I was like 12 or 11, 12, like the internet was starting to become more popular. I had it in our house, which meant that you started to be able to see the opportunities that the internet was affording relatively regular people, even if you weren't directly affected by it. Or so like that understanding was great, but it was completely opposite to the understanding that your parents had. They were like, why are you on the internet? Get off.
Yeah.
Not wasting time. Right.
Yeah.
So, and I think that if you were able to kind of get through that and use that entrepreneurial skills that you may have learned, or creative skills you may have learned, there are opportunities there that if you understood it, you could have benefited from. But like, because for so long you were on that track mind of, oh, I need to go to school, then I need to go to university. Once I go to university, I need to get a job. Once I've had a couple of jobs, I need to get a house, and I need to get a wife, I need to get kids, I need to do, and these are the things that I need to do in order to please my parents.
Yeah.
I think the internet kind of shook that up.
Yeah, so, yeah, I agree. I always thought that there's like a certain percentage of people who live this to-do list type of life. Like, exactly, like finish grade school with straight A's, finish high school, finish college, get a driver's license, find a wife, get married, have kids, and then get a job. And then basically when they get all the check marks and get to a point where it's like, it's usually around early to mid 30s, and it comes to a halt. It was like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
You know, like,
what's also super interesting to me though is I'm often jealous of those people. Maybe not the now what thing, but like of that straight track through, because an entrepreneurial life, there are like, it's literally uncertain day to day. Like this level of uncertainty. I was talking to a friend of mine, and she's run her own business for like 10 years. And she said that this level of uncertainty that everyone's having now due to the pandemic, she feels that it's unfortunate. But she's like, I've had to deal with massive levels of uncertainty every day, which makes entrepreneurs really suited to this environment. Take away the obviously negatives of death and all the terrible things, but like, yeah, being able to deal with uncertainty and get new information and then react, and also not know what's happening tomorrow. Will my business survive? Will the suppliers come through? Will there be customers? Like, does this messaging land? Does this app work? Yeah.
I think that entrepreneurs or like people or freelancers or people like us who are you're not risk averse, so you can wake up and go to sleep and not have a bad day just because something bad is happening, and because you know there will be a next day and tomorrow, and nothing, like there will not be the end of the world.
And they've developed skills. And that's why I'm really a big fan of like communities like yours. Like there are people who have or are developing skills to be able to weather storms, and there will always be storms.
One thing that I did, so it comes to fairly similar. I think a lot of these things are rooted in fear. And when I was doing a workshop on public speaking, because I took my stand-up comedy experience and I brought it to a workshop where people can learn how to basically just stand in front of people and do a simple presentation. It doesn't have to be stand-up comedy, but just come into your office and speak in front of 10 people. It can be extremely frightening to a lot of people. So I would usually take somebody from the audience who shits their pants when they see the stage, and I would put them next to me on stage, and I would be speaking. They would just be standing there watching the crowd, and I would tell one of my extremely embarrassing stories that I have from what happened to me, and basically share something that a lot of people would have like I would fall into the ground and like couldn't look anybody in the eye. And I share my story that it's like that type of story, and I'm more than happy to share it with you once we're done.
Yes.
And
not on the podcast.
Yeah, not on the podcast, not yet. Maybe in one of the special episodes.
Yeah.
But and then basically nothing happens, and I asked them, like, do you see? Like, nothing happened. We survived. People are laughing. We are all human. We all have bad days, and we can just go on with it, because a lot of people stop when they have this idea of the worst case scenario, but they never play it through. They just like, oh, this will happen. I was like, okay, this will happen. You will lose all your money. You will go bankrupt. Then what?
Yeah.
Like, what happens the next day? Well, I will need to find a job. Cool, you will find a job. What happens then? You get a paycheck. You pay off your debts, and then you're back here. People are like, oh yeah, okay, but nobody goes that couple of steps further.
Yeah.
And I think this is the problem. We need to just help those people to kind of overcome these blocks in their head. Well, they're just like, okay, you can go forward.
There's this concept of, and I'm definitely butchering the phrase, but it's about like lots of things actually have a very limited downside, and they have infinite upside. So if, for example, I made a complete and utter fool of myself on this podcast, then it went out. Like, it's like, life will continue. Unfortunately, like it'll be okay. But the opportunities that I have for building a relationship with you, of like building a relationship with the community, there may be really good things that happen from it. Like, there are so many things that have very little downside. And I think so many people focus on the negative and the downside. Oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? Well, even if it does happen, you'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I don't know how. I've been in the UK for a little over 2 years, so I don't know, entire inner workings of how the school system works, how people who are raised here kind of click. But coming from in Croatia, for some reason, I don't know why, there's this cloud of negativity on top of people. When you would say, for example, like, oh, I'm gonna be whatever. Like, when I would say 15 years ago, I'm gonna be a comedian, everybody would react like, you, a comedian. Or like, oh, I'm gonna be this. Everybody has this mockery tone, like whatever it is, doesn't matter. Like, oh, it's not that I said I'm going to be a ballerina, right? So it's like, it's something that it's more realistic. Yeah. So people are like, and it strikes into your self-esteem, So because nobody around you actually believes that you can do it. So I know it is hard for a lot of people who are just surrounded by negativity to actually go and do something when everybody is telling them they will not succeed.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's I think there's a phrase in Australia which is like the tall poppy syndrome, which is like anyone that tries to do anything that makes them shine, people will usually try and bring them down. And what's interesting is similarly I think in Europe, that kind of thing kind of happens. Whereas in America, if you told someone that you want to be a comedian, chances are everyone will be like, cool, man, like, I'll come to see you. Like, it's just a difference in ethic in some respects. Obviously, America is not the best at everything. All of the Americans that I met in my career, everybody has been super supportive of a lot of stuff. Even so I have, when I moved here, I met a lot of people, obviously, in London, but whoever learned, or I told them that I was a comedian, everybody's like, oh, when is your next show? I want to come see you. And even a guy from Australia. So even he was like, he was very happy in my show, very loud, very drunk, had some great fun. But people were very supportive. And this is one of the reasons why I moved. When I first came to UK 6 years ago, for the first time in my life, when I was in London, I think it was like 15 minutes into my first underground experience. So it was from the airport in the underground. I was looking at the map for the first time in my life. I'm looking at this London tube map. Something that you only see. Yeah, exactly. Something that you only see as a wallpaper until you actually move here. And I was looking at a map. It was longer than 15 seconds, and a guy approached me and asked me, "Do I need help? Am I lost?" And I was like, "Okay, no, sir. Like, this never happened." But no, came into the tube, and my wife, girlfriend at the time, she was sitting down. I was standing
standing above her, and we were talking, and the guy sitting next to her, he was like in his late 40s, and he asked me, do I want to take his seat so we can continue our conversation? I was like, just mind blown. Like, why would, like, just couldn't believe like this is happening, and decided then and there, okay, this is where I'm moving. This, I want to live here.
London, like I've lived in London a vast majority of my life, and when it's good and everyone's like positive and great and kind, like it really is wonderful. I used to live in Edinburgh, and that was really lovely, except that it was just cold. And as a black man, like I cannot deal with the cold too well. But yeah.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm a Mediterranean guy that just loves the sea, and this is perfect day today in London.
Exactly, perfect day.
Perfect day. 25 degrees. Oh man, I just miss the beach.
Yes,
the beach. It's fun.
Yeah,
but yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I never been to Edinburgh. It's on my list. Part of it is the Fringe Festival because of all of the comedy.
Yeah.
And the other part is just I just want to go there, and just not in the city. I want to explore, and that's one of the things that just, it's very, very high on my list.
Yes, you should definitely do it. Yeah, it's lovely. It's a lovely place and lovely people.
Oh, I know. I was in Ireland last year in Limerick, and my friend lives there. So we went. When I was in my teens, I worked in an Irish pub in Croatia. So I always kind of want to go to a proper Irish pub. I was never, and I didn't want to go to Dublin, where it's like London. It's like everybody. I want to go to somewhere where it's like proper Irish pub, and I got a real proper Irish pub experience with people playing violin and music, and got drunk as hell, and got out. And it was last year when it was a hurricane in Ireland, and we had no idea. We got shit faced, and we were like, "Oh, look at me! I'm standing, and the wind is helping me stand. I can't fall." And we went home like, "Oh, look at this tree being torn out of the the land." And we got home, woke up next day, like, oh, there was a tornado. It was like, we had no idea like why there's nobody in the street. But it was like a good, proper Irish experience after like 7 or 8 Guinness. So
Absolutely. Sounds perfect. Sounds perfect.
That was good. Yeah. I know that we got sidetracked a bit. Let me go back to Tectonic. I have a couple more questions around business, and then I'll try to ask a couple more. So I know that on your site, you have a clear messaging where you help companies improve their business metrics. And this is the question that, like, what would you say about some products having, some startups failing due to their poor distribution, not being bad product? Like, what do you think of that?
Yeah, sure. So it's a really interesting question. I think so. The real answer is, the answers to everything lie with your customer. If you know who your customer is, if you know what problems they have, if you know how to reach them, which is part of the marketing and channel to them, if you can afford to provide the service that you're offering as well, which is something that people often don't think about, then naturally all your other metrics will go up. Your word of mouth will go up. Your cost of acquisition will go down, hopefully. Your lifetime value will go up. So that messaging around the metrics is messaging to make it clear that your business will be better by you understanding your customers more effectively. And I think that's something that lots of businesses don't do, and lots of individuals don't do, because it's much harder than just trying to build something great. People think that if I build a product good enough, my customers will come. And there's lots of great products and services out there that people haven't flocked to because it hasn't actually solved a real need.
Yeah. One of the reasons that I'm not opposed to ads in social media platforms or whatever, because they actually help me to discover some great products that I wouldn't otherwise discover, because we are bombarded by everything. So even I'm sure that you know who Tim Ferriss is. I listen to his podcast regularly, and a couple of months back he decided to stop with the ads in his podcast. So he usually opens up with mentioning some product or whatever, and he got a huge backslash from his listener base, they say like, oh no, bring back the ads because
Mm.
it just takes a couple of minutes and we learn about new products that like he mentions something that, oh, I never heard about this. He mentioned Sam Harris and his waking up course.
Oh yeah, I
Right.
started using it. It's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
So I heard about it there, and I didn't think twice about it. I was like, oh, I'm using something different, blah blah blah. And then a friend of mine, he said, oh, I actually heard it too. Took a crack at it. It's amazing. Try it out. And it wouldn't come to be if he wasn't there, if Sam Harris wasn't a guest, and so on. So I think it's actually good.
Yeah, like my feeling around all that stuff is, because there are so many products and services out there. Actually, word of mouth and curation from influencers, and that's not models who are doing duck facing pictures, but people influential in your lives and careers, sharing products and services is actually pretty good. So again, I don't mind ads, especially if you're running a business. You should probably be paying attention to as many ads as possible, try and understand your market a little bit better, and also who people think you are and what's working. Like, what ads make you stop? What ads make you? What ads do you watch the whole of? Because at some point you will need to advertise your product or service, and knowing what is a good ad is a key skill, and you might as well learn on someone else's dollar.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. I read a book by a guy called Russell Brunson.
Yeah.
You know who he is. So
yeah, ClickFunnels, man.
Yeah, ClickFunnels guy. So basically, he built ClickFunnels on it. He, as a kid, was obsessed with those literal spam mail that comes into your mail, and he grew up just trying to ingest as much as those he can, just learn about him, and then basically everything he learned just applied and built an online product on top of it. So I think that's amazing. But yeah, I know that you are a big believer in communities, and you have your own podcast that I listen to. I mentioned that before we actually started, and I just want to ask you, from your perspective, what do you think? How much community actually affects your business? This is number one. And number two is, what would you advise to people? How should they engage with the communities? Then I'll tell you what I think about it, but I just want to hear you first. So
yeah, sure. So first question was around how does communities
how did communities benefit your company in the past?
Yeah, sure. So
you building your company.
Yeah, so the communities definitely benefit anything that you're trying to do, especially if you find the right communities and you're involved in them in the right reasons. So one of the key communities that I'm part of is there's a company called Us2, and they are a digital agency, and they have an arm called Us2 Adventures, and we were part of that community, and they were basically trying to help startups grow and foster. And that was about 3 years ago that we were part of it, and we're still communicating. Everyone is still really helpful in that group. There are so many people that have done really well in there. They've also got Us2 Games who make amazing games as well. So like, being part of a community is such an important thing, because you get to learn from people's experiences, especially, for example, when COVID really hit and their businesses really started to suffer for that first 2-3 weeks. Like, talking to people, not just about their business, but about how they were actually feeling, was so powerful and so humanizing. So I think being part of communities, whether that's based on your interests, whether that's based on your circumstance, whether that's based on your aspirations and dreams, is useful for connecting with people. And I think connecting with people is just one of the key things that you should be doing as an entrepreneur. Yeah.
Okay, first thing, you mentioned Us2, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's the company behind Monument Valley, right? Yes, I know them. I love their games. They're so different from everything else you can see, and it's so enjoyable. And anybody listening, if you haven't had a chance to play Monument Valley 1 or 2, just go download the game. I think it's the best money ever spent on an app store ever.
So apparently it's free. I think it's free now. During COVID, I think they've made it free.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so go and download it now.
In that case, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. So yeah, I'm a strong advocate of community, as you might see.
Yeah.
And when I talk to people, there are some people who kind of misinterpret when I say be a part of a community and let community help you with your business. A lot of people just join Slack and start spamming with their ads, like, oh, I'm doing this or whatever. In one of my groups on Facebook, I even banned self-promotion. So it's a community where you can engage, but you can't self-promote. It's strictly forbidden, and it's like instant ban. And it takes time, and this is something I know that a lot of people are impatient. I like want it everything tomorrow. And what would be your advice for somebody just starting out, like how to get involved in the community? I know a lot of people have imposter syndrome, and they don't know, like, oh, do I bring any value to the table? If they are just asking questions, they feel that they're just taking away, bringing nothing to the table. I had the same problem when I started out, like feeling that I'm mooching from everybody, but not, giving anything back. So what would be your advice to somebody who's just like early in their career?
Yeah. So I think if you engage in a community, so regardless of whether you are an introvert or an extrovert, I think being authentically engaging in a community and paying attention to people, asking honest questions, being kind with your responses, giving back to the community. So you may feel like you have nothing of value, and that's unlikely true. The way that it would normally work is so I'm part of a lot of music communities online, and I don't post as much as I should because I don't think my music is as good as theirs. But oftentimes I will like posts and talk to people about the songs that they just made, ask them questions, and by doing that and showing up every day, you end up building a reputation as an inquisitive person, or a person who shares interesting things, or a person who's nice or funny, and so that people start to see who you are. So I think being authentic and giving and whether that's a nice comment or actual value is useful. And yeah, I think having open conversations and being willing to make a fool of yourself in inverted commas because you don't know something is showing vulnerability, and being vulnerable is a good trait to have especially in communities, because people want to help. Most people want to show off what they know, right? So
yeah, you're 100% correct. I hate saying yes I agree, because I don't want this to be that type of podcast where I bring on a guest that basically you're like my sounding board and my my confirmation bias, like, oh yeah, this guy agrees with everything. Okay, so last question about business, and then I'm trying to wrap it out. We've been at this almost an hour, so
it doesn't feel like it.
I know it doesn't feel like that, and I'm really trying to be respectful of your time.
But don't worry, I've got nowhere to go.
I could do this for hours. Maybe, how about this? You agree now that we're going to do episode 2 at some point? And
yes, 100%, 100%.
Right. Yeah. Amazing. Okay, cool.
That's how business gets done, guys.
Yes, and I'm not paying you for this. So
exactly. This is just a pleasure.
Exactly. I'm just pleasuring Dan here. So this is exactly why this podcast is designated as not for children.
Yes. I did not know that, but I'm glad.
Okay, so like over the past decade, we've seen countless apps that make no revenue, and they launch and raise millions. And the trend is changing, and I think we are already experiencing some changes. What do you think the future for startup will look like post-COVID and going forward 2021? What do you think will happen?
So I think that it's going to be pretty much exactly the same. Like the businesses and the industries may change that achieve that get that hyper amount of funding and cash, but like there will always be businesses or VCs whose model is to pump loads of money into a vast majority of things to hope that something blows up, because that is a business model in itself for them. So I don't think it's going to change, but it is very profitable when it works out. I think that the interesting thing is, though, that there are lots of indie makers, such as yourself and the people within the community, who understand that that's not the only way of making money. And I think empowering people to be able to build products and services for niches, and a niche doesn't necessarily mean small, it just means niche, means that people will be able to make vast amounts of money and still have a life and not have to be beholden to that level of pressure for if you don't want it, because some people do want to build things like that. So I don't know if you heard about that Clubhouse app that's been going around. There's an app that is called Clubhouse, and it's basically, seemingly, I don't know because I haven't been invited yet, but it's a community-based app with that's based around voice. So it's a social network that's based around voice, and they've got loads of celebrities on there, and VCs are on there, and they've just raised 10 million from Andreesen.
Okay. There wasn't, I can't remember the name now, but there was like an app that was basically a Twitter for voice.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, Clubhouse.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's Clubhouse, because this was like a couple of years back.
Oh no, so this is a new version, because I guess there's a cycle of apps that always get recycled. But
yeah, because I remember this, and it was kind of you basically recorded a voice message and then posted it, and then people could listen to it. And I think maybe I'm getting too old for this shit, but I'm the type of person that hates voice messages. So when somebody sends me a WhatsApp voice message, just go like, I'm listening to music, doing my own thing, and I need to stop everything to listen to you because you're too lazy to type. So I know that I'm not the target audience for this. I'm 100% sure. So maybe now the time is come for something like that, because I kind of feel that whoever did it before failed because just the market wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And I think kids today, like kids, when I say kids today, just people who are now the new adopters of whatever it is, are ready for something like that.
Yes. And I think that's the interesting thing is, so I also don't mean to agree with you, but I also hate voice notes. It's just annoying. But I think one thing to be mindful of when you're making something is that market may not be ready due to the behaviors of your customers. And if you're try to get them to change their behavior, unless you have lots of sway or lots of money, you may not be able to get them to change their behaviors or force them to change their behaviors. And that's what a lot of businesses try to do. The startups try to do. They try to get people to change the way that they behave. The reason why, for example, I believe that TikTok is blowing up so well is that people have always relatively been narcissistic. So dancing, people have always wanted to share and talk about things and communicate via video. TikTok makes it so easy to share stuff outside of the platform. So people were sharing it on Instagram, they're sharing it in WhatsApps. Like, whereas Instagram, until lately, made it quite difficult for you to share things outside of the platform. So that's building a platform for how people behave now is what has inspired its rapid growth. So I think understanding your target customers' behavior is actually key. Ideally don't try and change their behavior. Latch on to behaviors they already have.
Yeah, I agree. I got hooked on TikTok, and when back when it was still Musical.ly. And I first time I heard about it was from one of Gary Vaynerchuk's videos. And he was talking about this app is gonna blow up, it's gonna be amazing, blah blah blah. And I installed it, and I was like, okay, this is shit. This is a bunch of kids doing dumb faces, whatever. I deleted it. And so I went back and forth installing and deleting like 5 times until recently. And then I discovered, I think first person that got me on was actually Will Smith, because he's so good. So I seen actually an interview with him somewhere, don't remember where he said that this platform basically gives him the opportunity to be as creative as he always wanted to be.
Yeah.
He talked about how hard it was in the 90s when you had an idea and you needed to film it and then go to a studio. Like it took a while, and then play it on TV. It just was like forever. And now he comes up with an idea. A couple of minutes later, it's live. It's there. And I was like, okay, let me see what Will Smith is up to. And I followed Will Smith. Then I think it suggested Dwayne Johnson and whatever, just spiraled from there. And now I follow these most random people doing most funny stuff that are, I love funny people that are funny in a way that I'm not funny in. So I'm a comedian, specific type of humor, but this dumb dad jokes that these people are doing on TikTok, this just gets me laughing every time.
Yeah, I feel like I think it's the nature, the kind of where we're at in society, especially going forward, is the democratization of pretty much everything, right? So like, I'm a big fan of no code tools for being able to build products and services, because as I mentioned, I can't code for the life of me. Couldn't code to save my mom's life. However, I can build products and services using a combination of tools like Zapier, Airtable, Webflow.
Yeah.
So, and the same thing with TikTok and YouTube, for example. Even back then, like before, having a TV show would have been impossible. Now you can have a TV show by just having a camera in front of you, your laptop in front of you, and talking to people. So, being able to build audiences based on something that you like doing and that people find valuable is key. And if you can do that, then it's also super defensible. Will Smith is Will Smith and has always been Will Smith, but he's now got a whole new set of fans from doing TikTok.
Yeah, absolutely. Since you mentioned, I have to ask you, I know that this like whole no code movement is a fairly new thing. And it seems fairly easy to people who are in IT, but I know it will give opportunity to a lot of people who are not good at coding to come up with certain solution. Can you tell me in a couple of bullet points what are the biggest advantages, and can you recommend to people listening a couple of tools to check out and just do something with no code and see what they can come up with themselves?
Yeah, sure. So no code is effectively a movement where people get to build products or services or automations visually. So rather than having to write a line of code, they can visually develop tools and services. Again, big fan of it because I feel like code is tricky. The advantages of it are being able to very quickly test out an idea or product or service without having to put too much time into it. Because oftentimes, depending on how you go about trying to approach your business, you're likely going to be wrong. But the faster you learn what's wrong about your business, the quicker it is. So the way that I look at no-code tools are actually just, and like the way I look at apps and services, it's a function of your business. It's not the business. So what you need to do is actually test whether this business works, not just if this app works. So being able to throw together a type form and then an automation using Zapier to be able to get that data, put it into like an Airtable, which is a database, to be able to then present some data, would allow you to build a very quick version of your business to see whether this is a thing. The other benefit is developers are excellent and they have lots of skills and they cost loads. And oftentimes trying to get a developer to build your thing is difficult because they've got lots of other people asking them to build a thing too. And they've probably got their own ideas. So if you can build something firstly, just to figure out whether there is a market for your business, if you can generate some revenue first, then at least you've got something that most people in the world have never done, which is generate revenue on the internet.
Do you have any, like from top of your head, links to certain services that are built on no code that people can check out and see like, okay, this has been built in a way that actually brings revenue? And it's
the businesses that I know that are built off of no code are, depending on the type of business, they may not say they're built on no code, because that ultimately, my thing is that doesn't matter. It's actually the business itself. So like, for example, I don't know the stack that Zoom's built on. Like, I just know that it makes you build, it lets you have excellent conversation. So the best communities for being able to find no-code tools and other no-code makers, there's a company called MakerPad, run by a man called Ben Tossell, MakerPad, which is great. And then there's another one called No Code Founders, which is run by a man called JT. And there's loads of other, if you just go on Twitter and search for no code. But what's interesting is that a lot of the time, technical people, or even people who want to be technical, are really in love with the technicality of things. Oh, this tool looks cool, I could do this thing. And me personally, I'm more on the business side. So this tool allows me to make money doing this. This tool allows me to help this person do this, rather than just the technicality of the tool. But there are some really great things out there, and I urge you to look at them because they may accelerate your learning and accelerate your opportunities to make that money, cash money. Yeah.
I will include everything that we discussed in the show notes.
And I'll send you a couple more links to some other apps. There's a one that I really like called Glide. Man, the website is glideapps.com, and it lets you make an app from a Google Sheet in like 5 minutes.
Okay, so yeah, please do. I will include everything. Hopefully, people will get to use it. And it's been over an hour, so I want to kind of wrap it up. But like any last words for the end? Do you want to plug anything? Talk about anything? Did I forget anything? Just go.
Yeah, sure. I think the only thing that I want to plug is we do office hours, actually. So if you go to our website, which is Tectonic London, Tectonic London.com, you can visit our site and book 30-minute office hours, free office hours slots to talk to me or my brother, who is my boss, and my younger brother too, about business and any problems that you may have. We just love talking to people. And then, we've also built a little app to help people and businesses ask the right questions at this time. I'll send you a link to that too, to send to your community. And on the positive side, like, you can do this. I believe in you guys. And stay safe.
Great. So your younger brother is your boss. That's
yes.
So good. I will leave this for the episode too, and then we can go.
Yes.
The dynamic of that relationship is something I would like to hear more. Thank you so much for your time. It's been really wonderful speaking to you. I really appreciate the time you took, everything you shared. I think that you have some great experience, great stories, great insights, and I hope this will help people get at least a little bit better. If it just helps one person, I think we made something great. 100%. So I hope to talk to you soon again. And I will link to all of your links where people can reach out to you. People can ask you questions or me, or join our community. And I'm sure that we'll give our best to give the best answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Thank you so much, and speak soon. Thank you everybody for listening, and bye-bye.